Hi, Democrats. Today is Thursday, December 7th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Thursday. So today is December 7th. And I know as generations go on, we lose sight of a little bit of history, but today is the day of infamy. Today is the anniversary, the sad anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the day that made America jump into World War II. And I just feel like I have to honor today because we're losing our veterans. My grandfather served in World War II, and he would have been 100 this year. We're losing our veterans, but we need to recognize and acknowledge our history, lest we're doomed to repeat it. And I thought I'd lead with that because I wanted to drop a little bit of note about, I'm just going to guess, the man who would win the contest for the state elected official who received the least amount of hugs from his mom. That's the only explanation I can come up with of why our superintendent of public instruction is so miserable. So he keeps doing things to get in the media, and I think it's because he's still trying to get that attention he didn't get as a kid. I don't know. But I mentioned him because, he is a champion of HB 1775, and he keeps bringing it up. And he keeps bringing it up, calling it woke, because folks are requesting, urging, encouraging, stressing that we need to teach all of our history. And I think it's important that we teach all of our history. So there you go, Superintendent of Public Instruction. There is your honorable mention for today. I hope that gives you the attention that you need. Now I want to talk a little bit about legislation that's coming up for the next legislative session, and it's Thursday, and we have our legislative expert on today. Join me in welcoming Representative Mickey Dollens.
Hey, Alicia. Great to see you.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you acknowledging December 7th, a day that will live in infamy. It's such a somber day, and I've had the opportunity to visit the Pearl Harbor Memorial in Hawaii, and it is such a somber but meaningful memorial that we cannot forget those who sacrificed, including your grandfather, or your father, right?
Grandfather. I'm not that old. My grandfather.
Your grandfather, yep, and mine too. So it's special each time. And while we're in session, when we get to recognize a veteran of the week, and they're a World War II veteran, as you said, many of them are passing away, but will never be forgotten. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm also right outside of a slum apartment in South Oklahoma City that is owned by an out-of-state landlord in California. Just did an interview with KFOR Channel 4. That interview will be on tonight at 10 o'clock. But it is yet another example of irresponsible, neglectful, predatory landlords taking advantage of Oklahomans and our state's weak tenant protection laws. Just visited with a lady who has 2 toddlers, and they're living with a roach infestation. There's mice. The heater is very inconsistent. The landlord told him to go buy a little space heater. And these are, this is a woman who's working 2 jobs. I asked if she's making minimum wage. She's making just a little over. And we need to talk about that too. The wages in between $7.25 and $15. I think that becomes a binary issue for some people, that even if you're making $8.50 an hour, it's still dang hard to make ends meet and not have to resort to slumlords with non-responsive landlords. And so when we talk about affordable housing, we're also talking about habitable housing, because there's some affordable housing that is inhabitable, and it's a danger, not just for people, but especially for little children as well. And so if you want to check out that story tonight, watch KFOR on Channel 10, and you can get a glimpse inside of that. And I think that because people have had the courage to step up and go to the news and talk, it has made a difference. And I say courage because Oklahoma is one of 4 states that doesn't have landlord anti-retaliation laws. And the last time I was with KFOR and we interviewed someone, About 3 hours later, their landlord called up and said, "You got to go." The tenant said, "How come?" He said, "Well, if you go to the news, then you have no business living in my place," and kicked them out. And unfortunately, they were within the law to do that. And I've been working across the aisle with Representative Daniel Pay from Lawton, who we've co-authored a bill that would increase those tenant protection laws. It would actually instate a landlord anti-retaliation law to protect people from speaking up for themselves. But also, as state representatives, that's our job, is to be able to use our platform to elevate the voices of our constituents. And anytime I get the opportunity to do that, I'm happy to. In addition to strengthening tenant protection laws, I've also been working for the past 3 weeks on drafting legislation. I'm going to file it tomorrow on preventing vexatious lawsuits, especially in family court. And I've heard from so many constituents who have told me that their ex-spouses have weaponized the courts by filing false contempts, pretty much frivolous lawsuits that not only take away their time, emotional energy, but so much money. And what this vexatious legislation would do is it would give guidelines to judges to be able to recognize and become aware of when an ex-spouse is simply weaponizing the courts to try to be vindictive, and would have to pay court costs and lawyer fees and all of that. So hopefully that will curb that, because I know that's been a problem for a lot of people in Oklahoma, especially in my district. And then also, you mentioned State Superintendent Ryan Walters. I noticed that in the last State Department of Education meeting, he was tying performance academic outcomes to accreditation. My bill would do the same, but for him. So I believe that within the Oklahoma State Department of Education's executive office, there needs to be guidelines and expectations. And if those expectations and guidelines are not met, for example, filing for federal grants, then the funding to that office would be cut off. I think that if you're going to tie performance and outcomes to pay, the same should be expected for someone who refuses to do their job. And that bill is called Do Your Job Act. And so I'm looking forward to doing that one. And then also have a few more that we can talk about. I don't think we got to last week, but would be happy to answer any questions you have about those two bills.
Well, so I like the Do Your Job law. And I hope that it sparks conversation, even if it doesn't get passed into law. I hope it sparks conversation, because he likes to talk about how woke teachers, indoctrinating librarians, parents, whatever, aren't doing their jobs. He likes to talk about it. He likes to go on all the national news media and downgrade Oklahoma teachers and Oklahoma librarians without really providing tools, without having conversations. It just sounds good. It's just sound bites. And so I would love it if the tables turned and he had to do something.
Well, I think all Oklahomans would prefer him to do his job. And unfortunately, we hear him posting and see him posting media after interview of him creating these problems, but using increasingly divisive and inflammatory rhetoric. I don't know how many times I've heard that this is a war. It's a battle for kids' minds. They're trying to take away your beliefs. They're trying to take away kids from praying on their own in school. All of this is false. And it is part of a movement. Oklahoma is the experiment for essentially Christian nationalists to be able to privatize public education, like some groups have already have with our prison systems and our healthcare. But in this case, it's a bit more malicious because there's a theocratic dynamic to this, where people in the legislature and elected officials for some reason believe it's okay for them to legislate their religious morality upon all of Oklahomans. And I know that Oklahoma is a diverse state. In my district alone, we have people from many different faiths and backgrounds, and we have naturalized citizens from all over the world living in South Oklahoma City. But for one legislator to mandate that a specific religion be taught is not religious liberty, is not religious freedom. Religious freedom means also freedom from religion. And everyone agrees, from the Attorney General to our state Supreme Court. And why does he continue to want to insert himself into matters that don't even concern him? Because as you mentioned at the beginning of this show, he loves the attention and he'll do anything to remain relevant. And so a lot of times people have asked, well, how do you address such a person? I read an opinion article in the Oklahoman the other day that said sometimes things like that need to just run its course. Sometimes it will just, wither away eventually. But in this case, it's a little bit more complicated because you're talking about the future of our state. You're talking about children's opportunities, limiting people from reaching their full potential while in school. And so it is something that we all need to be on board. And the number one best thing that we can do at this point right now is to campaign for quality candidates who are running for office. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's someone who's listening who wants to run for office. And then when it gets to be in the primary season and general elections, we got to vote. It's the number one thing that we can do. Support quality candidates and vote.
So before I get into a powerful, the feel-good story of the day, could you do me a favor? And could you define vexatious?
Vexatious would be, in simple terms, a frivolous lawsuit or something that is used just to be punitive. It could be false, a false allegation. You can file a contempt for anything. The judge will come by and decide whether or not it's valid. Unfortunately, you have to take time off of work to appear in front of the judge. You have to spend money typically on a lawyer. So it can be used as a way to be coercive and for people, not just in family spouses, but it can be in any type of litigation where someone can use the courts to remain controlling and by filing frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit.
So there's a difference between going to court to settle, what is it I'm trying to think of? Custody, right? And getting custody settled. Even going back and recalculating how much child support is due if you learn that one spouse is making more money than but the original. There's a difference between that and say one spouse just continuously taking another spouse to court or threatening to take another spouse to court just so that they'll lose their job because they have to keep missing work, or that they lose their place to live because they have to keep paying attorneys. There's a difference between the normal course and vexation, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a lot of issues that must be addressed in court, but when someone just uses the court to continue to punish the other person, then it becomes vexatious. And typically that's after, typically the judge will have ruled vexatious lawsuits after 2 or 3 of them prove to be irrelevant or false or a reach, right. So that's up to the judge's discretion. But currently in Oklahoma, there's no guidelines on deciding what constitutes frivolous and what is actually needed. Like in the examples you gave, those are legitimate issues that have to be addressed in court. And then there's some that people just use to be mean.
Absolutely. Now I want to talk about the feel-good story of the day. It's a feel-good story to me because of what we do, right? I get so excited when I see democracy at work. And the Enid Social Justice Club in Garfield County, they were aware at the time of filing that they had a man who filed to run for office at city council, who was part of the planning of the Charlottesville riot. He participated and he was the coordinator for Oklahoma to get people to the Charlottesville riot, the Jews Will Not Replace Us riot, where Heather Heyer lost her life. That person, because folks don't pay attention to city council, that person actually got elected to city council and is currently sitting on city council. But the folks who were aware knew about it and didn't stand down. They fought it. They put together a petition. They traveled all over their county within the district of this person and got enough signatures to get it on the ballot to recall this particular man. So the Enid City Council is one step closer to having a white supremacist out of their midst. And that excites me because this was citizen action, right? This who did the work. They sounded the alarm. They tried to do it in a peaceful manner. And then they put together the petition, and all working within the system, they put together this petition and got enough signatures to recall someone who should not have been elected in the first place. That is Nancy Presnall, one of the members of the Enid Social Justice Club, and she also happens to be the chair of Garfield County. We love Nancy. But I love this picture of Nancy. I adore Nancy, but I like putting that picture up so that people can see that it's regular citizens.
That's right. And I applaud the people of Garfield County. Nancy, you are using direct democracy as it is intended. And that's exactly why we have to protect that process. Now, Oklahoma as a state doesn't have an election recall process, but different municipalities do. And in this case, they've utilized that to make a real change. And it's so inspiring. And it's something, and that's what is the purpose. That's why the founders of Oklahoma put it in our Constitution when it comes to veto referendums, when it comes to initiative petitions or ballot measures, for the people to be able to have still control whenever their legislature won't listen, or when people get elected and they are not doing their duty, not fulfilling their jobs. That is exactly what they did, and I applaud them for doing that. It takes a lot of work. It is not an easy process. Our ballot initiative is one of the most stringent processes of all the 26 states across the country that have them. And so for them to be able to use that at the municipal level is awesome. And I hope they make waves and we continue celebrating them throughout the process. And then they get someone of good standing to replace that person and someone better to serve all people.
Okay, and I'm just going to wrap it up to say, this is why we have to vote. Every time the precinct is open, we have to pay attention. This person's kind of snuck in at city council. And frankly, I believe in our municipal offices, our city councils and our court districts and our school boards are breeding ground for the next level, state legislature. And so if he was able to hold office, without being questioned, he could have gone on to higher office. And so he's still there, and the recall, it's still up to the recall, but I applaud them for doing the work, for paying attention and calling attention to all of their neighbors and folks in their community.
Can I mention one thing before we go?
Absolutely.
We've got a huge election on Tuesday, right? With
big election.
Yeah, Larry Bush down in Lawton. I'm going to be going to Lawton this Sunday to knock doors in the afternoon for Larry. And would encourage anyone who's interested to direct message me or Alicia, and we will get you connected with volunteer opportunities. It's just about getting people to turn out and vote. We can definitely win this because Larry's opponent is extreme as it gets, and we do not need any more of that in Oklahoma. And so we are excited for Larry and applaud him for putting his name on the ballot, and we're going to do everything we can to get him over the finish line.
Thank you for mentioning that. And today is Thursday. So today is the first day of early voting. So if you're in Lawton or you know someone in Lawton, please encourage them to get out and vote. They can vote today and tomorrow, and then in person at their precinct on Tuesday. Thank you, Representative Dollens. And I'll see you next week. Thank you all. And I'll be back here tomorrow at 4:15.
Bye-bye.